What do we have here? You may have seen my video about an HP G7 laptop repair where the hinge broke. Today, we're going to do something a little different. This is a dv7 instead of a G7. It's a pretty nice looking computer. Unfortunately, it's got the same hinge problems that we see on the G7. I've already removed all of these screws that are visible. I've already taken this panel loose, though it seems to have fallen back into some of its slots here. I've already taken the keyboard screws out, the CD drive retainer screw. If you've disassembled any laptops, this is pretty obvious. Most of the screws that you see, you need to remove. I've removed all of the obvious ones. This one, there's one that goes somewhere around here. You'll find a lot of screws, but you pretty much remove every screw that you see. There are some, however, that are not obvious. You've got your battery. Take your battery out. There are 3 screws here that have to come out. There are 2 screws here, 3 screws under the CD drive, DVD drive, whatever drive. And they all have different Phillips head sizes, which is incredibly annoying. These flat screws in particular, you need to remember where they go. They're all different. The ones with the Phillips 00 heads, yes, that's right. This is a number 1 that I use for most work. And this is 2 sizes below. It's a 00. You will need a 00 Phillips. The smallest Phillips that I've ever actually seen that isn't an eyeglass screwdriver of some sort. And take all of these flat screws out. There are some here, but they're not 00s. They're actually just like the black ones that you remove here and here. For this hinge repair, I'm not sure whether we have to remove the hard drive, Wi-Fi cards, or any of that yet. It's been a while since I've disassembled one of these, so we'll find that out a little later. Now, there is a latch here that is supposed to release the keyboard and let you pull it up. In my experience, that latch doesn't work. So we may have to pry it out. Also, this is gone. The whole hinge is just broken loose. So what we're going to have to do is, when we open it, we have to squeeze this section to make sure the hinge doesn't separate more than it has to. We don't want to cause more damage. Now remember that release that's on the bottom? It's supposed to release the keyboard? Yeah, I'm going to try to push it. This is the other thing. Oh, it releases the keyboard, except it doesn't seem to actually let it go. Yeah, see, I pulled the release. It didn't really seem to release much of anything. Because even if you get a couple of these loose, you're still going to have to pop it loose manually. Thanks, HP. Okay. I've actually already opened this, and I put it back together so I could make a video, since people seem to like my hinge repair videos. Again, obvious screws have been removed. They're marked. All of these flip lock connectors here need to be pulled loose, and you need to get them out of their connectors. It's the same deal as the G7 video. They're really not that different. You do enough of these and it all kind of starts to look the same. Let me make sure that I took everything out. I did. Take every obvious screw out. Yep, all the screws should be out. So this top half really should probably come up. All right, Let's take a look here. So this top half, where do we have a seam? Oh, you know what? Can we pull it? No. Be careful. Got to get it in the seam here. Yeah, and as usual, everything just has to be clipped down with a bunch of plastic clips. Remember, the trick with these silly plastic clips is to get your pry tool in, but you don't try to pop the clips that the top has pushing down into the bottom. You pry the bottom and top away. Sort of works opposite of what you'd expect. You don't try to crowbar it open, you try to make the clips release by relieving the tension that's holding. Well, there's that. I guess that was a little easier than I expected. That doesn't look good at all. Okay. Well, all right. So, surprise number one. I have epoxied this together before, and the epoxy job broke again. Now, full disclosure, the people who brought this in admitted that they've dropped it a few times since I did this epoxy job. So what we're going to have to do is basically redo the same epoxy job. But because they've dropped it so many times, I also need to look and see if there's anything else that's obviously bad. Oh, that's not good. I think there's epoxy in my screw head here. So that's never going to unscrew again. Yeah. Alright. So we're going to have to redo this epoxy. If nothing else, that has to be done. I mean, nothing else looks damaged, but no, nothing else looks damaged. We just have to fix this. So, Loctite Plastic bonding epoxy. Yep. Get this. Get a piece of non-negotiable paper, and you're going to mix up the epoxy. If you watched my other hinge repair videos, you know what's coming. Squirt some epoxy, and I think this is the end of this tube. It's a good thing I have another one. Squirt some epoxy. Get a cotton swab of some sort and cut it. Cut the cotton off so you have a stick. Mix your epoxy together. This is the most exhilarating part of the process. You might be able to hear me better now that I moved the audio recorder out from behind the laptop screen. Alright, we have a nice big blob of epoxy here. Now, because we've epoxied this before, it may be a bit of a problem trying to do it again. There may not be enough room in there to put this stuff back. We may have to build on what's there. If there's any that's loose, it'd be a good idea to check just to see if it can be picked out. We don't want to block the hole that the screw goes through to the top half, but everything else basically needs to be blobbed up really nice. And apply epoxy to this brass anchor here. And in this case, we're going to, this hinge is very small, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and blob it up very heavily with epoxy, as well as the hole it goes in. Let's get this make it a little easier to work on here. make it easier for you to see what I am doing. Alright. Get it in the hole. It looks like there's actually been some damage to where the screw goes through in the first place. Alright. We're going to have to make an epoxy sandwich, just like what I would have done to this before they dropped it, quote, several times. And then, once that's done, we will poke a hole to get that hole opened up. Alright. Make sure that brass anchor has coverage all the way around. We're basically rebuilding the post it sticks in. And there we go. Not sure if you can see it on the cameras, but I've got it in. I'm going to take any that's squeezing out and try to move it to the sides to help reinforce it further, because at this point there's not much of it left to hold together. Wow, that is rough. Poke the hole. See, I'm putting this swab through the hole, poking the hole out so that the screw can go back through it later. Realistically, this would probably work better if I had more epoxy available than I do, but I do not. And because I do not, well, that's just it. Okay, now one more step. We are going to need to rub any excess epoxy off the rim here. We don't want to attach the top half to the bottom half permanently in case they drop it yet again. While we're in here, let's really quickly check the screw holding this hinge. Make sure it hasn't loosened, because that's the kind of thing that happens. Nope, that's pretty tight. Okay, we need to get this to not move. Let's get it to its natural seated position. And so we have an epoxy sandwich. We've punched a hole out for the screw that will go through. We're going to put the top cover back in place, and we're going to hold this corner, because what we're actually doing here, some epoxy came off on my finger. Oh, yeah, there's quite a bit of epoxy here, huh? If you get epoxy on your finger, try to get it off as quickly as you can. I now have a situation where some of the epoxy is coming out of the screw's hole. So I'm going to score this Q-tip and snap it, since I don't want to reach for the pliers again. And I'm going to clean the epoxy back out of the screw hole again, so that the screw can be put back in properly. Alright. Now, we need to put one of the hinge screws back in to hold this hinge to this half. Get it in there. Come on. Tighten it up reasonably tight. Wipe any epoxy off your screwdriver. Once that hardens, you won't ever be able to use your screwdriver again. Get it out. Get it out. Get it out. And then get some of the screws that go nearby. I think there's one up here. Put them in. See if I can get you a better angle on the action cam here. It might shake a little more here, but you'll be able to see better once this is done. Okay. You should be able to see what I'm doing better now. Screw here, already in, put a screw here. Also, I'll show you here. Those are the two closest to the corner that we're trying to retain. Also, a favorite of mine. Oh, did you hear that? It's one of the clips engaging that we popped earlier. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to get a C-clamp and clamp down on the corner, trying not to damage the power button or anything in that general area. The button's down here, so let's get this as far down as we can, just to hold this corner a little tighter. That way it doesn't come loose. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. Okay, now, basically, we're going to let that sit there until the epoxy hardens. I'll probably leave it overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and take a look at it. But now you know how to disassemble and repair a busted hinge on an HP Pavilion dv7, not just a G7 as in one of my previous videos. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. And thank you for your viewership. Hope this helps you. And we'll be back to do some more repairs in a future video. I plan on doing more of these hinge repairs and other exotic little things like this that maybe you don't see all the time, but that are very handy to know how to do when you need them. Have a good one. Oh wow, everything changed. You got a different shirt on. Everything's moved a little bit. What's going on? It's day 2. Okay, the hinge mount, that's okay. I epoxied a screw in place. It rotates, but it won't come out. But I don't care, because when I put it back together, I can just screw it down anyway. But I have to take this motherboard out and do a reflow. Since I have to do that, I thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and show you what you need to remove to get the board out all the way. Here's a display cable. I've already pulled it. Here is your speaker assembly here. Unplug that. Unplug this speaker here. Some machines may not have all of those speakers, and you'll try to pull up and realize it still doesn't come up. Well, there's a DC jack connector here. I'm not using a second camera this time, since this is just a little update to add to the video you've watched so far. But here is your DC jack connector, which you can probably, if you're careful, pull up on a little and pry, and it'll pop right out. But it's still stuck. Well, what's going on? What's going on is you have a hard drive connected here, your CD drive has a wire connected here, and your Wi-Fi card, these antennas have to come loose. But the card does not have to be removed, like on some systems. So unplug your hard drive cable. It's got a plastic thing, little tab you can pull up on here. And your CD drive is the same. And pull your Wi-Fi antennas off your Wi-Fi card. And that should free up your motherboard. There's nothing that I can see on the side. You will have to slide these ports out of their holes. But other than that, that should be about it. There could be something holding that fan down, but I don't see anything. So the fan should come up with the board. Well, let's play a little game. Does it come out? No, it's stuck. Why is it stuck? There's a screw right here. You can usually find motherboard screws by looking for these white arrows pointed at copper screw holes. In this case, there's one here. There's one here. There are none over here. And I'm fairly confident those two screws are the only screws remaining that are holding this board down. Yeah, look, everything's coming up. Now, when you get the board up, you have to slide it away. See how these are coming out? You may even have to pull the plastic away a little bit. Be gentle, especially since the epoxy's there, and this may be stuck by that. In fact, I think my epoxy is now my worst enemy. Yeah, there's definitely something that's holding it there. Let's get it up. A little epoxy right there. Not a huge disaster. What's this? That's interesting. There's a piece of paper here. So it looks like the last time, the time you did not see me do this work, I put a piece of paper here in between this heatsink assembly and the epoxy area to keep the epoxy from getting on the heatsink too much. And it worked. It was mostly effective. So a little tip for you, if you're epoxying your hinge, since this heatsink is in such close proximity, go ahead and slide a little piece of paper between the Go ahead and slide a little piece of paper in between the heatsink and the area you're epoxying, just to keep the epoxy off of most of the heatsink assembly. Flip it over. Still got the RAM. CPU is socketed. We have a chip and another chip, and those are what I'm going to reflow. If you want to see a reflow, I have several videos up. One in particular focuses on just doing a reflow on a laptop motherboard. There's a third chip there, by the way. And you can go look that up. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description, and you can go watch that and see how to do a reflow. And that's basically it. One more note, by the way, I can see there's RAM here and here and here. You look for these little flat black chips. See, there would be some here too if it had a bit of a video memory upgrade. But these little flat chips nearby, they have ball grid arrays too, so they also need to be reflowed. You can reflow them just like the others, as usual with any reflow work. Remember that you're going to need to shield all of the plastic stuff just to make sure that you don't burn anything up. Also, this CR2032 battery may need to be removed for the reflow. It's too close to the chip, and if it gets too hot, it can explode. So we definitely do not want a lithium explosion on our hands. So that actually needs to come out. But the really neat thing is you didn't have to remove the fans, you didn't have to remove the RAM or the Wi-Fi card. The hard drive is still screwed into the case. You don't have to remove the hard drive. If you removed all of these things, it would have just been wasted effort. So in the end, once you get all the screws out of the top and bottom, it's pretty easy to get the motherboard out. Hope that supplement helps you out a little bit more if you were needing to get the motherboard out completely. And that's about it. Have a good day, night, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thanks for watching my videos. Like, comment, subscribe. You know, I'm just going to do that thing everyone else does where they beg for stuff. Give me stuff. Have a good one.